So my research looks at investigating the correlation between insects and some of the behaviors they exhibit. And so we do that by looking at the DNA level. And we're interested in applying that to a couple different areas. One area in particular is trying to understand, in a forensic context, how quickly or how slowly an insect develops. And that can be useful for estimating a postmortem interval, for example. So it has a big forensic application. Another area that we're interested in is insects as feed and food. It's a sustainable agricultural product. It is the future of food, likely, and so we are interested in trying to understand how these insects develop and how we can optimize that to make it even better of a system. Every day when I speak with my students and I hear about new things that they've discovered, it just gives me another boost to just keep going. And so I think that I'm trying to continue to discover new things and to learn something, which is what I've wanted to do all along, is I just want to learn something new every day, and I'm lucky that I get to do that. Having an impact on society as a whole would be the ultimate goal for any researcher. And whether it's the forensic science work that I do, which would have an impact on victims and other people associated with the criminal justice system, to the insects as feed and food, which will allow us to feed the growing population in this era of climate change. And so I think that's how you gauge success, is how that impacts society as a whole.
My field of research is ecohydrology. Essentially, I'm interested in the interaction between vegetation dynamics and the water cycle. I think I'm always thinking about cutting-edge questions in my field in terms of how vegetation impacts the climate, impact the whole Earth system. Because one of the big unknown question in the Earth science system is how vegetation actually responds to the climate change and to regulate the climate. So my research will basically address the fundamental questions, how vegetation play a role in this in the whole system, and that will reduce our future predictions about the impact of climate change on the whole Earth. For the example, I talk about the drought impact for agriculture. That is one example, utilizing the knowledge of ecohydrology to helping the societal issue. At the same time, not only agricultural plant will be impacted, the natural plants, natural vegetation will also get impacted. For example, we have a project that is a forest response to drought. So we know forest is actually a big player in terms of the global carbon cycle, because forest together with soil, they actually take up 30% of the global carbon we emit. And when drought comes, that will reduce their capacity to actually take up the CO2. At the same time, we know some trees are different from others. So basically, the forest composition will actually impact the carbon sequestration of the whole forest. So my research actually try to understand how they can do that, why they do that. So we actually use some advanced technique to actually monitor their physiological response and try to understand why they do that. Because I think only if we understand why they do that, we can then understand how do they respond in the future.
So my research program is focused on improving self-management and quality of life for people with chronic diseases, and specifically epilepsy. And my program of research really focuses on using the patient voice through big data and other methods to make sure that the interventions that we build are really focused on what's important to patients. So capturing the patient voice is really important when you're building a behavioral intervention to improve outcomes. And when I did my PhD and then my early career as a scientist, we relied on traditional methods like qualitative and then quantitative surveys and model testing. But what's really unique about my research now is that we have added to that the mining of social media data. So patients, when they have questions about their illness, not just in epilepsy but in others, they will join a Facebook group, they will go to a foundation site, website, like the Epilepsy Foundation, and ask each other questions. So when you mine that data, the difference between that and the traditional methods is it's an organic type of data generation. There was no instrument through which that data came from the participant. So it's really actually, in some cases, more reliable, and it doesn't rely on the researcher to know what to ask. So I did get some pushback initially because it is so new and sort of a strange way to do this type of research, but it has been extremely successful and shown us things that we didn't know that we're now building into interventions to help people with epilepsy. Even though they have an illness, as a nurse, my perspective is getting them to their maximum level of functioning, even in the context of having that illness. So I think it's all about quality of life. So that is where this type of research can really be impactful. I really didn't know if we would find anything different in social media or other large data sets or Twitter, but I feel like here we have the freedom to be as innovative as we possibly can be, because that's the only way that we're going to make these large gains.
My research, put simply, involves creating evidence-based strategies for policing and criminal justice more broadly. Most recently, I've been involved with doing spatiotemporal data modeling, especially how can we take data in space and time and use it to help anticipate where problems and challenges are going to be in our community. So hopefully we can develop effective interventions so they're evidence-based. When you work with the police department, what you do can impact everyone that lives in that city. But most importantly, what we're looking for are we making an impact in those communities that most need it? And so when we talk about the intersections of service delivery, of access to good quality of life outcomes, when we talk about systematic racism, we talk about social unrest around social issues, all of those things coincide in different parts of the city. And so what we're trying to do is really figure out where in the city can we have the biggest impact on people's lives, and that's through using the data on those metrics to inform what we do and where we go.